The morning sun had just started to pour its soft gold over the treetops of Fairview Park. Birds chirped lazily, and the dew on the grass still sparkled in the early light. Joggers passed by, their shoes thudding softly against the winding path. Everything seemed as it should be, except for the small, silent figure nestled beneath a bush near the children's playground. Charlie had been there for 2 nights already. He was a small rabbit, mostly white with patches of brown across his back and ears, and the tips of his paws looked like he'd stepped in melted chocolate. His fur was matted from the damp grass, his long ears drooped low, and his eyes held the kind of stillness that comes only after deep confusion and fear. Charlie didn't understand why he had been left here. One moment, he had been in a cozy enclosure filled with shredded newspaper, alfalfa hay, and the scent of familiar humans. The next, he was bundled into a cardboard box, driven for what felt like hours, and then left under a bush with only a carrot and some lettuce that wilted in the heat of the day. At first, he'd stayed still, listening to the strange noises, the barking of dogs, the honking of distant cars, the shouts of children. None of it made sense. None of it smelled like home. By the second day, hunger gnawed at him. He'd nibbled grass, cautiously hopped a few feet to sip from a puddle. Once, a curious dog spotted him and barked, lunging at the leash before its owner pulled it back. Charlie darted into a thicket of bushes and didn't come out for hours. On the third morning, he was trembling from cold, heart racing at every sound, when a shadow passed over him. A soft voice followed. "Oh my goodness, hey there, little guy." Charlie didn't run. He didn't have the strength. The shadow crouched. A rustle. A snap of a twig. Then warmth. Gentle hands. He flinched, but they didn't hurt. They lifted him gently into a towel, tucked him close, and he felt, for the first time in days, safe. The shelter wasn't loud, but it was full of sounds Charlie didn't know. Barking echoed from distant kennels. Meows rose and fell in waves. People talked, cages opened and closed, and sometimes, when the quiet moments came, Charlie could hear other small animals moving around. He was placed in a clean cage with soft bedding and a water bottle that dripped quietly whenever he touched it. The volunteer, a red-haired woman with freckles and kind eyes, whispered to him when she cleaned his cage or gave him food. "You okay now, buddy," she'd say. "We'll find you a home." Charlie didn't understand the words, but he recognized the tone. It calmed him. Days passed. Then weeks. He watched faces come and go. Some stopped at his cage, cooing and smiling. Once, a little boy tapped the glass and shouted, which made Charlie dart into the cardboard tunnel at the back of the enclosure. The volunteer gently covered the cage afterward and gave him an extra leaf of romaine lettuce. Mostly, Charlie waited. He began to recognize the rhythm of the shelter. Morning meant fresh hay. Noon meant the rumble of carts with pellets and water. Evening brought quiet again. Sometimes, he would press his nose to the bars and look out at the people walking past, wondering if any of them would be his person. Wondering if this was just another stop on a journey he didn't understand. Miles away, in a cozy third-floor apartment overlooking a narrow side street, Megan and Theo sat at their small kitchen table, sipping tea. "It's so quiet," Megan said with a sigh. Theo glanced over the rim of his mug. "Peace and quiet, that was the point, right?" Megan smiled. "I know, but I was thinking, maybe we should get a pet." Theo arched an eyebrow. "In this shoebox? We don't need a big pet. Not a dog. And I'm allergic to cats, remember?" she said, laughing softly. "But something small, gentle, something that'll make this place feel like home." Theo considered it. "A hamster?" "No," Megan wrinkled her nose. "I was thinking, maybe a rabbit?" "A rabbit? They're quiet, litter trainable, and adorable." "Okay," Theo said slowly. "Let's go look this weekend." It was late Saturday morning when they walked into the shelter. The place smelled faintly of pine shavings and disinfectant. A cheerful volunteer greeted them and led them to the small animal section. Megan's eyes went wide at the sight of all the rabbits, white ones, gray ones, even a fluffy lion head snoozing in a corner. But then she saw Charlie. He wasn't hopping around like some of the others. He was resting, still and silent, but his eyes were watching. "Oh," Megan whispered, "that one." Theo followed her gaze. "He's cute. He looks thoughtful," she said. The volunteer came over. "That's Charlie. He was found abandoned in a park. He's been with us for a few weeks now." Still a little shy, but he's a sweetheart. Can we hold him? Megan asked. They were led to a quiet room, and Charlie was gently carried in. The volunteer placed him in Megan's lap and stepped back. Charlie didn't panic. He stayed still, nestled in the crook of her arm, blinking slowly. When Megan scratched gently behind his ears, he gave the tiniest sigh. Theo sat next to her and reached out. Hey, little guy. Charlie shifted, sniffed his fingers, and then nestled a little deeper into Megan's sweater. And just like that, he had a home. The first few days were quiet. Megan and Theo had set up a spacious pen in the corner of the living room, filled with toys, tunnels, and a cozy fleece-lined box. Charlie explored cautiously, inch by inch. Every sound made him pause. But there was no barking. No clanging cages. Just soft music, the bubbling of a small water fountain, and the occasional clatter of Theo making tea. They talked to him gently, never rushed him, never forced him to be held. And slowly, something began to shift. By the end of the first week, Charlie had figured out the litter box. By the second, he was venturing outside the pen on supervised runs, his ears up and alert, whiskers twitching. And then, one morning, Megan found him sprawled on the living room rug, legs stretched out, body completely relaxed, dozing in a patch of sunlight that streamed through the big window. She didn't move, just stood there and smiled. He's happy, she whispered. Charlie's favorite place quickly became the windowsill in the bedroom. They'd set up a small ramp so he could hop up safely, and he'd spend hours there, staring out at the rustling trees, the fluttering curtains, and the occasional pigeon that landed on the sill. Theo started calling it Charlie's throne. In the evenings, while Megan read and Theo played guitar softly, Charlie would hop from lap to lap, sometimes curling up beside them, other times exploring the corners of the room with curiosity and quiet confidence. There was a rhythm to life again. Not the nervous, uncertain rhythm of the shelter, but a calm, warm one. A home rhythm. But Charlie's journey wasn't over yet. Because soon, something would happen that would test the bond they'd built, and change everything once more. The sunlight spilled into the bedroom like warm honey, and Charlie lay stretched out on the windowsill, eyes half closed, ears flopped gently to the sides. He could hear the soft hum of city life below, the occasional car, a distant bark, a toddler laughing in the courtyard. Megan walked past with a mug of coffee and paused to smile at him. "You're the king of this place, huh?" she whispered. Charlie twitched his nose in approval. It had been a month since he'd come home with Megan and Theo. The once nervous rabbit who flinched at every sound now roamed the apartment like he'd designed it himself. He knew every inch, from the kitchen tiles that were cool under his paws to the soft rug in the hallway where he liked to flop over dramatically when he was sleepy. He especially loved the corners. He would find odd angles of the room to inspect. Behind the couch, under the low bookshelf, or beside the laundry basket. Megan joked that he was their little inspector, always making sure the apartment passed his mysterious rabbit standards. Each morning, Megan and Theo would open his pen and say the same thing. "Good morning, Charlie," Megan would sing, reaching down to stroke his back gently. "Operation Breakfast Burrito is a go," Theo would announce, bringing over a small bowl of greens and a slice of banana, Charlie's favorite. Charlie would rush to them now, ears alert, tail wiggling as he hopped in loops. The once fearful bunny had transformed. But the biggest change wasn't just his confidence. It was how deeply he trusted them. One evening, as the golden hour light turned the living room into a painting, Charlie did something he'd never done before. Megan was lying on the floor, flipping through a book, when Charlie hopped right onto her chest and curled up. "Hey," she laughed, delighted and still as a statue. "Theo, look." Theo, in the kitchen pouring tea, peeked over the counter and grinned. "Oh my God, that's the rabbit equivalent of a proposal." Megan gently reached up and scratched behind Charlie's ears. He closed his eyes and melted into her sweater. It wasn't just a cute moment, it was something more. Something sacred. In his own quiet way, Charlie had chosen her. They started calling themselves a little family. Theo even made a print to hang over Charlie's pen, Team Bunny, Est. This year, Charlie had his routines now. He'd run circles around the couch after dinner, then do binkies, little jumps with twists in the air, when he was especially excited. He had a habit of tugging on Megan's sock when she was sitting cross-legged, demanding pets. He stole bits of kale from Theo's hand when he wasn't looking and nibbled his shoelaces for revenge when Theo caught him. He loved lying in the sun more than anything. Sometimes Megan would sit beside him with a book, and they'd both just exist there in silence, soaking in the light. But not every day was sunny. The storm came in fast. It started with a whisper of wind through the open window and a strange smell in the air, earthy and electric. Charlie's ears perked up. Megan noticed it too. She looked up from her laptop. Feels like rain. By the time Theo got home, the sky was steel gray and a low rumble rolled through the city like a warning. They closed the windows, drew the curtains, and turned on soft music. Rain began to tap against the glass like impatient fingers. Charlie sat in the middle of the room, nose twitching rapidly. Megan knelt beside him. "Hey, it's just rain, buddy." A flash of lightning split the sky. Then came the thunder, loud, sudden, shaking the windows. Charlie bolted. He ran faster than Megan had ever seen him run, straight down the hallway and under the bed. Megan followed, but he was too deep in the shadows. She could just barely see the shine of his eyes. "It's okay, sweet boy," she whispered. "You're safe, I promise." Another crack of thunder. Charlie didn't move. The hours passed slowly. The storm didn't let up. If anything, it grew angrier, louder. The rain was torrential now, and the thunder boomed so hard the lights flickered. Charlie hadn't come out once. They tried everything, treats, gentle talking, even playing his favorite music. But he stayed hidden, paralyzed by fear. Megan and Theo sat on the bedroom floor with flashlights and snacks, refusing to leave him. "He's never acted like this," Megan whispered. "It probably reminds him of the shelter." "Or, worse," Theo said quietly. They waited, and waited. Finally, in the smallest hours of the night, when the storm began to fade into a tired drizzle, there was movement. Charlie crawled out slowly, ears low, eyes wide. He didn't hop or explore. He went straight to Megan and curled into her lap. And he shook. Megan wrapped him in her sweater and held him there, whispering nonsense, her eyes wet. They sat like that for hours. After the storm, Charlie wasn't quite the same. For a few days, he was more cautious again. More easily startled. He stuck closer to the windows, watching the sky, wary. Megan and Theo adjusted everything to make him feel safe again. Softer lights, soothing music, extra cuddles, new hiding spots in every room. They even bought him a plush hedgehog toy that he loved to drag into his tunnel. Eventually, he began to bounce back. But he was never quite that afraid again, not even when another storm came 2 weeks later. This time, he stayed in the corner of the couch, curled between Megan and Theo, flinching once at a loud boom but staying put. He knew now. He wasn't alone. Spring turned to summer. Charlie celebrated his gotcha day with a crown made of clover, a tiny carrot cake, bunny safe, of course, and a long, sun-drenched nap with Megan on the rug. The apartment had become more than just a place to live. It was a sanctuary, a tiny kingdom ruled by a rabbit with soft fur, sharp instincts, and a heart bigger than anyone could guess. Charlie had come a long way from the cold, wet grass under the bush in Fairview Park. But there was still one part of his journey waiting to unfold. One final adventure. One moment that would show just how much he truly belonged, and how much he meant to those who had opened their hearts and home to him. The summer days rolled by like lazy clouds across the sky. Charlie had found his rhythm again, sunbathing in the windowsill in the morning, loafing near the fan in the afternoon, and zooming through the hallway like a fluffy blur in the evenings. Megan and Theo had memorized the sounds of his paws tapping across the wooden floor, the gentle thunk of him flopping down, the curious rustle when he tugged a blanket into the shape he wanted. He was more than a pet now. He was the soul of the apartment. They rearranged furniture to make space for his tunnels. They added a bench by the window just for him. Megan even knitted him a tiny blue sweater one rainy day, though he wore it for a grand total of 5 minutes before flinging it off with dramatic offense. But it was okay. Charlie was expressive in his own quiet way. Every day, he reminded them just how much love a small, silent creature could hold and give. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like any other Sunday. Megan was watering the balcony plants while Theo sat cross-legged on the floor building a little hideout for Charlie from cardboard boxes. Charlie supervised, occasionally inspecting corners, nibbling rogue tape, or nudging Theo's hand for pets. The balcony door was open just a crack to let in the breeze. Charlie had never gone out there, it was unfamiliar, too high up, with no sun patch and no soft rug. But that day, something caught his attention. A pigeon fluttered to the railing and fluffed its feathers. Curious, Charlie moved closer. He hesitated at the doorframe, ears forward. Megan glanced over. Charlie, no, stay inside. But it was too late. He darted forward. And then, in the smallest blink of a second, he slipped. His back paw caught the edge of the doorframe. He flailed, scrambled, and vanished through the balcony slats. Megan screamed. Theo dropped the box. They both lunged to the balcony, hearts hammering in their throats. Charlie? They looked down. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. But there, just barely visible in the ivy-covered flower box below their unit, was a flash of white and brown. Still, unmoving, Megan was already running. The building's staircase blurred under her feet. Down 3 floors, barefoot, heart in her throat. Theo was just behind, shouting for help. Outside, Megan tore across the courtyard and found the flower box, a long, narrow patch of soil beside a maintenance door, tangled with ivy and dry lavender stems. She dropped to her knees. Charlie? She pushed aside leaves, and there he was, curled in a tight ball, trembling, his little sides rising and falling so fast it didn't seem possible. One of his back legs was twisted beneath him. His eyes were wide, wild with fear and pain. Oh no. Oh Charlie. Theo was beside her now, pulling off his shirt to wrap around the shaking rabbit. We have to get him to the emergency vet. Now. The next 2 hours were a blur of panic, honking cars, fluorescent lights, and hurried voices. Charlie was taken from Megan's arms and whisked behind a swinging door. A vet tech asked questions. How far had he fallen? What symptoms? Any history of injury? They didn't know. They just knew he had to be okay. Time moved like molasses as they sat in the sterile waiting room, holding hands, barely speaking. Finally, a vet emerged. Her face was calm, but serious. He's stable, she said. It was a bad fall, but miraculously, nothing is broken. He has a dislocated hip and a bruised rib, but no internal bleeding. He's a very lucky little guy. Megan burst into tears. Theo squeezed her hand until his knuckles turned white. You can see him, the vet added gently. He'll be on pain meds and need to rest for several weeks, but he'll recover. Charlie looked so small in the clear-walled recovery crate, wrapped in a towel, one ear flopped over his face. But his nose twitched when he saw them. Hi, sweetheart, Megan whispered, pressing her fingers gently to the glass. You're so brave. Theo leaned in. Hey, little man, you gave us a heart attack. Charlie blinked slowly, and even in his groggy, medicated haze, he shifted ever so slightly toward their voices. Recovery was slow. They brought him home the next day with strict instructions. No running, no jumping, no stairs. They transformed the living room into a soft-floored sanctuary. They built pillow walls, made a custom ramp for his litter box, and laid out fleece everywhere. Megan took time off work. Theo brought his laptop into the living room so he could work beside Charlie. Every 2 hours, Megan hand-fed him greens and fruit, coaxing him to eat. She crushed his meds into banana paste and whispered softly with each dose. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe. Charlie didn't protest. He never tried to hop or escape. It was like he understood, they were helping him heal. Some nights, when he was especially restless or uncomfortable, Megan would curl up beside him on the floor, arm gently draped over his back, heartbeat steady near his side. You're our little miracle, she'd whisper. And slowly, Charlie began to mend. After 2 weeks, he started hopping again, carefully, awkwardly, but determined. Theo called it his hero's limp. By week 4, he was back on the windowsill, watching the world with his usual quiet intensity. His hip was healing, though he'd always carry a slight stiffness on rainy days. But there was something new in him now. Not just trust, not just comfort, but courage. That fall, Megan printed a photo of Charlie, ears up, nose proud, framed by a golden sunset. She hung it in the hallway with a little wooden plaque beneath it. The heart of our home. Charlie, for his part, remained as humble as ever. He still tugged on socks for attention, nibbled at Theo's shoelaces, and flopped into sun patches with theatrical flair. But now, when storms came, he didn't run. He sat in the middle of the room, head up, like a tiny sentinel watching over his kingdom. And if Megan or Theo were nearby, he'd crawl into their lap and stay until the last thunder had rolled away. The couple often found themselves talking about Charlie in the quiet hours. "Can you believe he was abandoned?" Megan would say, brushing his fur. "Can you believe he chose us?" Theo would add. Charlie would close his eyes, content, and nestle deeper into the crook of an arm or the warmth of a blanket. He didn't need to understand the words. He already knew. He was loved. He was home. And he would never be left behind again.